passage of time, we have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.
This meeting of the Board of Alderman is called to order. Join me please in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. For those of you who are a bit confused by seeing me in this chair, I'd like you to know that I'm serving in the place of the mayor, in the role of mayor pro tempore, due to the mayor being temporarily absent on a trip to Washington, D.C. He and Terry Kemp of Starkville Electric Department are meeting with and lobbying on behalf of public utilities. So I will be chairing this evening's meeting. The first piece of business is the approval of the official agenda, which you should have in front of you. Are there any proposed changes?
I've got a few changes. I would like to add, under board business, item A, consideration of approval of the Cotton District Arts Festival special event permit to consent.
Are there any? Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, may I be recognized on
You
that? Board, there's been a supplement on that item, and that is the commercial general liability policy that's at your desk. The one that was in the packet did not contain the insurance amounts, and the supplement does. So long as this supplement attaches to that consent item, that's fine.
I'll amend that consent to include the replacement supplemental insurance.
Do you have a copy?
It may not have been distributed to everybody. Here is a copy.
Vice Mayor, may I be recognized?
Mr. Perkins.
Okay, Madam Vice Mayor, I like for a few items to be put on the consent agenda. Let me fast forward to page number 3.
Okay.
Item number E, regarding the Arts Fellow Cemetery on University Drive, I propose that for consent agenda. Fast forwarding on page number 5, I propose items 1 and 4 under personnel for consent. Items 1 and 4.
Thank you. Any others?
I've got one more. Under board business, item H, consideration of approving advertisement for an RFQ. I'd like to keep that on consent, but in the actual RFQ, evaluation of submittals, I would like to strike number 8 for the proposed budget to be included as a submittal, since this is an RFQ.
Vice Mayor, I've got an objection to that, if at all possible.
If you want to take that one from the consent agenda?
Yes, ma'am, I just had a
Mr.
question about it.
Is it something that you think can be handled
My
now?
request to be,
Okay.
take item H off of board business off of consent agenda.
Okay. Any others?
And then I'll ask, I see Ms. Creasink, if y'all want to, do you want to still present, considering your event is put on consent agenda? Any need to?
I think we're good.
Okay. Well, then we'll strike public appearance A.
What we have to this point is striking public appearance A on page 2, moving item 10A on page 2, item 10E on page 2, to the consent agenda, removing item H from the consent agenda and amending that to include a provision to strike item 8. On page 5, moving items H1 and H4 to the consent agenda. Are there any other proposed changes?
So to be clear, we're just removing the RFQ from the consent so we can discuss.
Yeah, because the strike wouldn't come now. That is just a removal
Okay.
from the
Right.
consent, and we'll deal with the strike.
Are there any other changes proposed? Mr. Carver?
The only one I've got, I think, is under K sanitation. Item number 2, removed from consent.
I'm sorry, Alderman, what about that?
Remove
Item-
item K2. from
Number 2
consent
under
agenda on
sanitation.
page 6.
Okay, I see.
Any others? If there are no other changes, is there a motion to approve the agenda as revised?
So moved.
Moved by Alderman Vaughn, second.
Second.
Mr. Corey has seconded it. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And if there are no objections, the consent agenda will be approved. There are no minutes this evening, and so we will move on to the mayor's comments. And it is my happy duty to introduce a new employee this evening. If you'd come forward, please, Mr. Clemens. The City of Starkville would like to welcome Joel Clements Jr. as our Information Technology Manager. Joel is originally from South Haven, Mississippi, but moved to Starkville in 1983. He's a graduate of both Starkville High School and Mississippi State University. He graduated from MSU with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and a master's degree in Business Information Systems. Before joining the City of Starkville, Joel was employed by Mississippi State in the Division of Academic Outreach and Continuing Education as the Instructional Technology Coordinator. Joel's wife, Jennifer, is a native of Oklahoma. Jennifer is a nurse at the Student Health Services Center at Mississippi State, and they met while Joel was at graduate school and Jennifer was enrolled in nursing school at the W. Joel, Jennifer, and their dogs, Daisy and Sam, live on Hiwassee Drive. Joel's parents are Joel Sr. and Barbara Clements, and he has a sister, Daphne Clements Shannon. Joel attends First United Methodist Church in Starkville, and when Joel isn't working, he enjoys all MSU sports, traveling, art, music, playing tennis, and hunting. Please join me in welcoming Joel as Information Technology Manager for the City of Starkville. Our next business is Board of Alderman comments, and the first thing that we have is the recognition of the Employee of the Month by Alderman Parker. Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm pleased this month to recognize Bill Green as our Employee of the Month. Bill, if you'll come right up here, I'm very pleased to recognize Bill Green as the City of Starkville's Employee of the Month for February 2011. Bill was hired 3 years ago as the city's hearing enforcement administrator for the Building, Codes, and Planning Department. Bill has become a tremendous asset to the city. His willingness to go the extra mile has proven to be quite valuable. Along with his hearing enforcement duties, Bill also helps out with issuing permits, scheduling inspections, and processing purchase orders for the department. Bill's talents and involvement extend far beyond the Building, Codes, and Planning Department. One of his more unusual responsibilities is that of cemetery plot salesman. Bill is the point of contact for those who are in need of a burial plot and wish to be buried in one of Starkville's 2 public cemeteries. You may also recognize Bill as the face behind the camera, filming the monthly Board of Alderman meetings for the local television station. We can also thank Bill for our monthly e-packets. It is his responsibility to post the agenda and packet information on the city's website. Recently, Bill has been a tremendous help during the transition in our IT function. He has handled many of the routine issues and proven helpful to many other departments during this period. Bill should be commended and is commended for the extra effort he gives to the City of Starkville. His can-do attitude has been a positive influence on those around him. The city of Starkville is proud to recognize Bill Green as Employee of the Month for February 2011.
Congratulations.
Vice Mayor, since you're the acting mayor tonight, I know the administrative assistant's not here, but maybe we can arrange with your picture since you're the acting mayor and those two gentlemen at the next earliest convenience.
We will do that. We took a picture with Mr. Green before the meeting.
Well, that's fine.
And
That's
then
fine.
tomorrow, if you have a chance, we can arrange something at the mayor's office tomorrow. The next item of business is citizens' comments. Anyone who wishes to make a comment, please come forward. Give us your name and board, please, if you would, for the city clerk. And remember that comments are limited to 3 minutes.
Good evening to the mayor and board. To the mayor is absent. To Vice Minister Trump, Alderman Vaughn.
Good evening, Alvin.
Thank you, Alvin. Thank you for checking on me at the last meeting. We had a housing meeting and it was at the same time, and it had me tied up. But thank you for thinking about citizen comments. Citizens are very worried. We talks about the budget and money, but then we're spending money like water. The citizens do not want to lose our police department, our sanitation department, our fire department, our public work. That is our backbone. We look forward to those people. Take those people and departments under consideration. We need them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Are there other citizen comments?
Stan Sheridan, Starkville Recycling. I guess I consider myself all the wards. I've given out each and every one of you a letter of my thoughts on the RFPs that went out. Those estimated quantities and amounts right there are based on actual facts from my 8 years of experience of recycling here in Starkville. And I hope that you'll consider what is in those letters right there to you and make the right decision. I guess my last request is if you would recycle the paper those letters are written on.
Thank you, Mr. Sheridan. Are there other comments?
To me, recycling is where we can save some money. And the way we're doing it now, I don't know if it's costing us money. That I'd like to see, I mean, I'm not requesting one, I'm just a citizen, but I'd like to see some point a full audit of recycling. Is it costing us money or saving us money? And if it's saving us money, let's not do it to look pretty. Cancel the program if it's costing us money to recycle. I mean, I guess now we're gonna be sending the trucks to Tupelo or somewhere instead of to the landfill. I just think now so few people in my neighborhood recycle. I think me putting mine out is counterproductive. The fuel for that truck to come pick up my one bag, because energy is really what you save when you recycle, and money, and the environment as well. But let's not just do it to make the environment part look pretty and know that we were wasting fuel and wasting money. So, you know, I just like to see an audit at some point. Are we saving money? Is it costing us money? If curbside recycling is costing us money, let's discontinue it. Just, that's not, you recycle to save money. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Are there other citizen comments? It appears no, so we will move on to the next section of business, which is public appearances. Item A, the Cotton District Arts Festival went to consent agenda, so we will move on to item B, the annual report by Chairman Jerry Emerson of the Planning and Zoning Commission's 2010 activity report, as required by Chapter 2, Article 5, Section 2-138 of the city's Code of Ordinances. Dr. Emerson.
Good evening, Madam Vice Mayor and Alderman. I believe you all had in your packet the summary of the material that we have worked on for the past year and passed on to you all, and the disposition of that both at the Planning and Zoning Commission and at the board level. And I will be at your disposal to attempt to answer any questions you might have.
Board? Appears there are no questions, Dr. Emerson. We appreciate the work that y'all do, and it's of great assistance to us as a board.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to speak for myself and say that the assistance that Chris Latimer provides us as part of our looking at these matters is invaluable, and we have been really enjoyed it and appreciated having him working with us for the past year. So I'd like to take note of that.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Jerry.
Thank you.
We now come to this evening's public hearing, which is a hearing on amending the sidewalk ordinance 2009-07 and the City of Starkville Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98, Article 3, construction and maintenance of public sidewalks, to include a variance process and the requirements for granting a variance process and other related purposes. It has been the mayor's policy when we have these public hearings to have a period of 30 minutes where we take comments, alternating between those who wish to speak for the issue before us and those who wish to speak against the issue before us. We will continue that tonight. Do we limit the individuals, or it's just a total of? Total of 30 minutes, 15 minutes for, 15 minutes against. And we also typically have someone who provides a brief overview of the changes to the amendment, and in that case, in this case, Mr. Dumas has agreed to provide that summary.
Thank you. The ordinance that is in your packet is what's on the table tonight. There's several changes. As you can see, there's comments that are floating in the bubbles on the right-hand side of the page, and those are not substantial in the fact that they are changes in the ordinance, just general comments throughout the discussion of the change. I want to go over this so that everybody's on the same page and we look at this so that everything is understood. In Section 3, there were a couple of changes specifically relating to single-family developments. 3.1a change, on developed lots, sidewalks shall be completed prior to the issuance either of a certificate of occupancy or a certificate of completion for each individual lot. And then under B, and all required sidewalks on undeveloped lots shall be completed by the record owner of property within 2 years of the acceptance of infrastructure facilities and roadways by the city. Should the owner refuse to complete the sidewalk installation, the city shall perform the remaining improvements and shall levy and collect taxes by special assessment in accordance with the state statute. What this does, just briefly, is take the responsibility from the developer themselves. I know Alderman Parker had shared some issue with this, and puts the responsibility, as happens in most developments, on the homeowner as they complete the construction of their home to build the sidewalks. And then obviously they have 2 years from the certificate of occupancy issuance to then build those sidewalks on undeveloped lots. No certificate of occupancy would be given in an undeveloped lot, but on lots that are purchased and not developed, those individuals have 2 years to complete the sidewalk installation, or taxes will be levied as the city will build those sidewalks. Under 3.2, we have stricken the idea that the trigger for this is all new non-residential or non-single-family or non-agriculturally zoned projects or construction improvements equating to 50% or more of the tax appraised value of the property. And what we have done is added into that a statement for all other new development projects or construction improvements equating to or greater than $100,000 and where the cost of sidewalk installation does not exceed 10% of the total construction improvement cost. So basically anything over $100,000 and projects that with sidewalks that do not exceed 10% of the total construction cost will have to build sidewalks. You'll see as you move on down that owners of existing single-family homes on previously accepted public streets lacking sidewalks shall not be required to bear the sole burden of sidewalk construction. That's important in our existing neighborhoods.
Alderman Dumas, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I had a comment about that sentence. I think that's loose language because it doesn't talk about what burden they will be imposed to bear or who will share in that burden or what percentage the other party will bear. So just to flag that.
Do you have any suggestions as to how to tighten that up?
No, I haven't right now. I just looked at this sentence, but
You'll do that for us.
sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, if you'll look into that for us. Under 4.1, all we've added is to clarify that the sidewalk should be constructed from lot line to lot line within the right-of-way. That's just to tighten that up from the previous statement. Under 4.8, we've added 2 exceptions to this section. Exception 1 is exceptions to this ordinance shall be made in the event that the construction of a sidewalk will have a negative impact to the historical, archaeological, and/or architectural value of the site if the site has been deemed by the government or the city, the state, or the United States as having said value. 4.9 is an exception to include in the event of threatened or endangered, or in this case, endangered plant species. Those, I think, is this your clause here too that deem this as loose?
Yeah, 4.8 and 4.9 need work as well.
Right.
I'll be in touch.
And those were flagged on that as well, so just note that. Section 9, this is the appeal process. All appeals from the administrative adjudication process regarding violations of this ordinance shall be referenced or referred to the City of Starkville Board of Alderman, basically clearing it up that we will be the appeal hearing process. Now, the real part of this and the biggest change in this is the request for variance. In Section 10.1, requests for variance from the requirements of this ordinance shall be submitted in writing to the Building Department for consideration by the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. The reason for the request and this proposed justification for the variance shall be specified in the application. The application for the variance shall list the details of the project and include engineering design work, survey information, and/or other supporting documentation. The sole criteria to be evaluated in granting variance shall be that the cost of constructing the sidewalk constitutes an undue hardship as defined in Section 10.3. 10.2, the Board of Adjustment and Appeals shall sit as the quasi-judicial capacity to hear and decide all variance requests from the requirements of this article. A formal written application, it talks about the application to the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. 10.3, and this is the reason for the variance, or the details of what the undue hardship is. The determination of whether undue hardship exists shall be based solely on the cost per linear foot to install sidewalks as prescribed in Section 4. The sidewalk construction cost estimate used to claim undue hardship shall include only items that are related to the sidewalk installation. It shall not include any items that would be required as part of the project in the absence of the requirement to include sidewalks imposed by this ordinance. The Transportation Committee shall meet quarterly to review and document the average unit price for sidewalk constructions for the purposes of establishing a standard metric against which to measure the proposed construction cost. These unit costs will be determined based upon quarterly posted construction bid averages provided by the Mississippi Department of Transportation and in consultation with the city engineer. The Board of Adjustment and Appeals shall determine that sidewalk construction constitutes an undue hardship on the applicant only if the estimated sidewalk cost per linear foot is more than 2 times the average rate as documented by the Transportation Committee. So to sum that up, basically we use the Mississippi Department of Transportation listed quarterly costs, and then those costs are compared, and if it is deemed possible through the requirements of submittal that that cost per linear foot is 2 times the said cost documented by MDOT, the variance will be granted. After this, You see some of the requirement submittals. Talks specifically about a need for a site plan. This is under section 1I. To get this specific variance, you have to submit a site plan or survey, a site plan showing that alternative sidewalk configurations that may meet the standards of this ordinance were looked at, that the proposed subdivision or development and the location of the sidewalk is proposed to put in their requested variances granted, an itemized cost estimate for sidewalk installation that shall provide line item quantities, unit price, and extended price for each type of work required to complete the sidewalk. So basically making sure that the verification is there. We do give under section 2 and 3 of that same, or in section 2 and 3, the ability of our city engineer to make sure and verify that those said documents are true. And then obviously under 5, after hearing and upon consideration of the application, the Board of Adjustment and Appeal shall grant or deny the variance request. And then to finish up, you can see under the, if a variance is granted, it shall be granted upon findings by the Board of Adjustment and Appeals that the following criteria have been met. Under number 2, well, there's one, that failure to grant the variance would result in an undue hardship to the applicant. Obviously, that's the first. And then others, that the necessity for a variance is not the result of conditions of the property which have been self-imposed by the applicant or previous owners. So basically, an applicant can't go in and change the site significantly to get away from the sidewalk. And then number 3, that the variance is not based on the proposed sidewalk connecting to an existing adjacent sidewalk. Under C, if the variance is not granted, 10 days shall file written complaint, and then obviously that appeal will come back to the Board of Alderman. Those are the changes. Then obviously, City Attorney, you'll get back with us on tightening those few languages to make sure that those are tightened to the point that they need to be.
I will email you.
Okay, good.
And it
Other than
should-
that, that's all I have.
Thank you for summarizing that. It should be obvious from this that part of the reason we have these public hearings are to find areas where the proposed amendments or proposed ordinance, whatever we're hearing, can be refined and be something that we can take to a vote. We will not be voting tonight. There will be a second public hearing on this. As you come forward to make comments, please bear in mind that the ordinance as it was originally written was written to encourage the development of a system of sidewalks across the city over time. We realize that this is not a quick fix, and this is putting something in place that will, over time, allow there to be a system of sidewalks in the city. The amendment that we're looking at addresses a variance for the city as a whole and not for any one project. So we're not voting on a variance for a project. We're voting on a variance process for the city of Starkville, and that will live with us past any one project. At this point, if you would like to make a comment, please come forward, give us your name, ward, and make your comments. Ms. Outlaw, our city clerk, will help us keep up with time.
Georgia Murphy, I'm Ward 3.
Good evening.
The word vision keeps coming up. The vision we'll see for the next many, many decades is bits and pieces of sidewalks that do not connect to each other in any way. Many of these new sidewalks end abruptly at a drainage hole or inlet or at a deep drop-off where there's danger of falling. Cost should be only one part of the consideration for granting a variance. A systematic plan almost never fails to achieve desired results. If the city would show a good faith effort by funding and constructing sidewalks in areas of most critical need, it would make so much sense, and it would likely make citizens at least see that a systematic plan is being followed. Forcing citizens to do something that they cannot see a common sense reason for is not a sound basis for governing. But if you insist on requiring construction of sidewalks, then the requirement should be for new sidewalks that connect to existing sidewalks and variances should be granted based not just on cost, but on a set of common sense considerations. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone who, that was an against, anyone wishing to speak for?
Yes, Peter Bain, Ward 2. I've come to several of these meetings. I heard the changes read aloud just now, and I hear a consistent, thoughtful plan to involve both citizens, investors, developers, and the city in developing a walkable sidewalk network. I read a lot of reports in the news about the cost of gas potentially going up. Sidewalks are healthy. It's a great place to walk. That's how I got here this evening. And I want to support the variance process. I want to support the work that the board has put in the Transportation Committee, and I think this is the right way for the city to proceed. We need sidewalks. It makes Starkville a livable, walkable, attractive place to be. It'll help attract people, and we all have to work together to get there. We can't get there just in one fell swoop. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone wishing to speak for? Anyone wishing to speak for?
Hello, I am Mark Duncan, Ward 1, President of Starkville Motion, and you guys look good under the new lights. So, we've asked for an ordinance that has the ability to be applied to every situation in the city fairly without room for favoritism, and I believe that this existing amendments to the ordinance provide that for the city. I would also like to think that or to state that I believe the city has made a good faith effort in actually working with the existing sidewalks within the city. As we can see as you drive through downtown, you can see the existing or the improved ADA curb cuts that have been made to the existing sidewalks throughout downtown and across the city. You can also see the effects of the new sidewalks that have been installed out Reed Road, increased traffic and walking out through there. So I think the city has done a good job and has taken that first step in actually improving the walkability of the city of Starkville, and I think this ordinance helps us to continue that trend. I think it's a good trend. I think it's a positive one for the city of Starkville, and I think things can only get better. From what I've heard as well, developers have had a chance to, or some of the developers had a chance to review the amendments and feel that it is fair. Starkville in Motion supports these amendments as we believe they provide a fair, just, and equitable appeal process or variance process, which is clearly defined and not subject to interpretation. And that's really all that we can ask for from an ordinance for our city, is that it be fair and just and be easily applied to all situations across the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone wishing to speak for? Anyone wishing to speak for?
I don't see any problems with any of the amendments proposed. I think a further amendment needs to be added, similar to the one from Hillsborough, New Jersey, but that's not what I want to talk about. Another place I'd like more clarification, my family built houses all over town. On the south side, north side, we have one of the last, I think maybe there are 2 lots on Hiwassee Drive that are not developed. Do I have to build a sidewalk there or not? I don't think.
No.
Okay. I don't know if the language is clear because I didn't hear dates or how we decide. I'd like that language tightened up.
Mr. Davis?
Yeah, existing owners of existing family homes on previously accepted public streets lacking sidewalks shall not be required to bear the sole burden of direct cost of sidewalk
So it's
construction.
previously accepted street.
Yeah, no streets are accepted.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone else who wishes to speak for? Seeing no further comments, this public hearing is...
I have a couple.
Okay.
And the lights are
We'll get to
bright.
you in just a second.
Okay.
The public comment section will be over. And now, comments from the board. Mr. Carter.
One of the reasons I voted to continue in the public hearing is to keep this wheel grinding of what we got to do something. We've got to get this problem solved. And so that's why we needed to continue to have these public hearings and find some kind of solution. I think that everybody involved here does deeply care about sidewalks. I do myself. Also, one of the things is that everybody knows that sidewalks are good, but I'm not so sure, the scattered approach that's happening now. You see it. What good is that to be biking and then have to walk for a mile and then bike for 100 feet and walk for a mile? It's just, that's probably not the best way. I've been looking through and I found applications for final plat approvals that would do our subdivisions. And this is maybe a way we've all talked about payment in lieu, but maybe to, have we ever talked about performance bonds? And I wanted to do this in an open meeting setting with the city attorney, but doing a performance bond as we do with our neighborhoods and require that once a lot line was touched, that would be the individual, that would be the time that the performance bond be run to the city and the city actually go from there. And the reason, I'll just leave you that for a second, but I think that we talk about beautifications and things like that. I don't think it's going to be beautiful when there's just scattered sidewalks for over the next 10 to 20 years. It's got to be a way that once you trigger that effect, once you get from one lot line, and trigger the effect of construction to the next and the next and the next. And somebody brought up Reed Road. That's a great idea. I'm all for new roads. Reed Road was, that's a good sidewalk. It's a continuous sidewalk. I'm all for Reed Road. But the scattered approach, I've seen a couple on 12 pop up, but honestly, I think it's going to be quite embarrassing from an aesthetics and a beautification standpoint over the next, I've heard say 40 and 50 years till these sidewalks start connecting. But in the meantime, how can we do that? And one of them may be to do a performance bond. And I've actually drafted you, I've not drafted, just print this off Municode. And what that would be maybe a cash or escrow deposit in the full amount, up to 200%. So if it is 20 years down the road, that performance bond can be run to the city. And then at that point, it's a triggered effect of sidewalks. And once A gets completed, then B and C, and it's going on down like that. But the way it is now, I think the variance process is a little strict to the fact that nowhere with topographics in Starkville, how anybody, I don't see any real hilly areas, it's going to be 200% times the estimated average cost of a sidewalk. So then you're limiting that down to just few and far between, and that being the sole criteria. You said at section, Alderman Dumas said, section 10.3, it says the sole criteria in evaluating granting variance shall be the cost of constructing a sidewalk that it constitutes an undue hardship. I think there should be more criteria than just undue hardship. Mr. Johnson is a good example. It kind of triggered this whole thing. Is what's the point of him putting in a sidewalk right now? Unless he said that if the city would connect into him a mile, 1.6 miles away, he'd be all for putting in a sidewalk. So I see his justification behind that. But maybe that's something just to keep this process rolling, because I think everybody here knows that we need sidewalks. I know we need sidewalks, but the way to do it in a scattered approach, which is happening now, may not be the best option. So, that's why I did vote for this, and I'll give this to the city attorney and look forward to working on maybe seeing if this would happen, some kind of performance bond. Have you looked into that before with sidewalks?
I have not, but I'll be happy to take a look based on your
What is the
language
difference
and
between a performance bond and we talked about payment in lieu? Is there a major difference?
ideas. That's what I'm worried about. We have to watch out that it's not an impact fee, which the Mississippi Supreme Court has said is illegal in the context of sidewalks. But I'll take a look at it and we can reach a resolution on that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Any other comments, discussion? Seeing none, we will move to the next item, which is board business item C, the report from the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee. Mr. Parker.
Thank you. From the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee, we just have a few items we'd like to update the city on. We currently have over 1,800 residents and businesses that are signed up for our recycling program. The Sharon has done a great job on applying and receiving grants. We have received a $50,000 grant for the purchase of our new green recycling bags and for advertisement and education of the program itself. Matter of fact, on our agenda tonight is the first item that would have to do with this grant, and that is buying new recycling bags for this upcoming year. She is also, on our agenda tonight, there's also a notice where she has received a $50,000 grant towards the purchase of a new truck specifically for recycling. So just wanted to say that Sharon's done an excellent job in searching and finding grants out there that help our recycling program, and these are 100% grants. They're not payback or anything. We're also going to have, in relation to the $50,000 advertising and education, we will have a presentation at our March the 15th board meeting on an advertising program that the board will look at to see, as part of that grant, again, it includes an advertising and education facet that we have to spend the money on those facets of the program. So we'll have a presentation on March 15th on an advertisement program that the board will listen to. So that's my report.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on those grants. We appreciate all the department heads' good efforts in looking for grants for the city of Starkville. We've been successful in several. We appreciate that. The next item on the agenda is the consideration of calling for a public hearing on amending the sign ordinance 2008-10 to include modifications in allowed size, rights-of-way, signage, and amortization of non-conforming signs. Before we begin discussion, Mr. Parker's agreed to give us a quick overview of the highlighted changes or amendments that are proposed. And today what we're doing is calling for a public hearing.
Right, we're just calling for the public hearing, which will be next week. This is, in general, the similar sign ordinance that we've had in front of us 2 or 3 times that's been presented. We're changing in the first section, under section 3, under definitions. We're actually defining a few more of the words in there: amortization, balloon, bypass sign. We're kind of just going over what our definitions in the beginning will be. Directional signs, were multi-tenant business signs, and all these things, as far as definitions, they're all referred to in a later section of the ordinance. We have a section under residential message signs, which means that signs in citizens' yards, like for Starkville High School or Relay for Life, those can be allowed on citizen property. On your own land, as long as you meet the setback requirements. No signs will be allowed in the sight distance triangle at any intersection. We've defined balloon signs, which and kind of define where they're acceptable, where they're not acceptable. We didn't have that in the ordinance before. We've seen here recently, we've seen some political signs that are now being erected as bigger signs, like as a billboard. So we put some language in here that if you're going to do a billboard political sign, that you have to have a regular sign permit for that. And it has to be approved by the building department. Directional signs, we have a section 13 is directional signs, which will direct you to certain businesses within the city, or not businesses, certain places within the city. Before, we did not allow any directional signs. Now we're allowing directional signs if you're identified by a 501c3, which is a nonprofit. You're allowed a directional sign as long as you meet the criteria spelled out in section 13. We have under section 16 the signs that are exempted from permitting. We have start with section F. We go through F and G, which have to do with banners and schools, parks, and athletic fields. Non-conforming signs, we've left in the current ordinance. If you have a non-conforming sign and that sign gets damaged, we already had this. If if 50% of the sign's value gets damaged, then you have to come into compliance. We already had that in there, we just changed that language a little bit. Section 18 is amortization of non-conforming signs, which says that if you have a sign now that's non-conforming, you would have up to 10 years to actually bring that sign into compliance. Those are the basic. We added that under exceptions, that the Board of Alderman shall review any exceptions from the requirements of this ordinance. So we're in the final say on whether somebody gets exempted or not. It would come before us if somebody applied for an exemption and was not granted.
Thank you. Thank you. So clarifying language, adding a few things there. Any other comments or discussion by the board before there's a motion, hopefully, to call for the public hearing?
I move approval.
Mr. Dumas has moved approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Corey has seconded. Any discussion?
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Who called for this to be on the agenda? Someone from the sign committee or?
Amazingly, I don't think we have a sign committee. Actually, it's something that has lingered for quite a while, and Mr. Parker and I had asked to have some final resolution to this.
Just to get some final, one way or the other, to get final resolution and because we originally started this for directional signs, and it's kind of encompassed a lot more things than the original intention. So I know the mayor has a letter under his signature that is kind of allowing those non-conforming signs for directional signs, they're allowing those non-conforming signs until the board makes a decision. So he's kind of wanting a resolution to this so we can know one way or the other whether those signs are allowed.
I know we had met before. I didn't know who decided to go forth with this because I thought we were working through amortization. And
the amortization has changed from 3 years to 5 years to 7 years, now at 10 years. So that's basically it's just kind of transgressed all the way up to 10 years.
Well, again, I won't support anything with amortization in it for the belief that if you tell a man that he owns something, say on Highway 12, and he's not in compliance, that he has, just forthright, I'll tell you how I vote on that. I don't think you have the right to tell a man to dig into his own pocket to change a sign. That I know some of us fundamentally disagree about that, but I didn't know we were through the process of working through this, or is this something you drafted? Who set the 10-year amortization?
This is, I think, the original from the last. I didn't go detail by detail. This may be from the last sign. I think this is the original language from the last public hearing we had. Very similar.
And we can vote after the public hearing if there's a move to change the amortization period. We can certainly take a vote on that.
I'm fine with it.
After the second public hearing, you can move to strike, or after any public, you can move to strike any section of the ordinance that you want to strike.
So that's not something we have to resolve tonight.
Right.
Tonight, what we're doing is calling for a public hearing.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor of calling for public hearings, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay.
Do we need to take a roll call vote, or? Okay. I believe the vote is 4-2, with Alderman Vaughn and Perkins voting against. And the next item on the agenda is discussion and consideration of requiring the citizen transportation, I'm sorry, I skipped item H, which we took off the consent agenda. Consideration of approving advertising for an RFQ for consultants to prepare a form-based code and master plan for certain areas of the city of Starkville. Discussion.
One reason I asked for this to be pulled off consent was just to get a little better explanation of what this is.
And this is something that Mr. Dumas feels passionately about. So
The Comprehensive Planning Committee has met several times, and we feel, and that committee feels, that the best next step is to request for qualifications from consultants so that we can look at developing a form-based code. And when you look at the comprehensive plan and you look at the other things we have in place and you look at the other planning efforts that are happening across the city or with the university and others, we think that this is the next logical step to look at areas of high-intensity development that we see and that we feel are on the horizon so that we can, as some like to say, get our house in order before things begin to happen. And I think this is a good next step to look and see what the actual, what the details will be once submittals are put in from the qualification side to see what the potential can be for us to look at this, look at these qualifications and hopefully move forward to a proposal standpoint. But this has been graced by the Comprehensive Planning Committee, and we think it's when you look at the Main Street charrette that's happening the end of this month and some of the other very logical, very public, very planning-based opportunities that we have, I think one of the things that we as a city and as a board need to look at is the standpoint of how we begin to develop the policy that helps frame those types of recommendations into a logical procedure for us. And so this is just that next step so that we can begin to look at alternatives. So the proposal, or the RFQ is actually attached to this. I asked to submit our strike number 8, considering this is a request for qualifications and not proposals, so we wanted to take any implication for budget out of this because we don't want to suggest that we're making qualification decisions based on price. But one of the things that does need to change in this, and it's noted on the front of the packet as far as the additional information standpoint, but I do need to change the submission date to March 25th, 2011 on the date. But with that, I move approval of authorizing the advertisement for an RFQ for a consultant to prepare a form-based code and master plan for areas of the city with the change of submission date to March 25th, 2011.
And the striking of,
I'm sorry?
and the striking of item.
And the striking of number 8 under evaluation of submittals.
Mr. Dumas has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Parker has seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Carver?
That was my only question. What was the source of funding for this? I know this is just an RFQ, but if in case you accept it and they do a performance.
Yeah, we don't know yet, and we don't know exactly. We really don't even know what to think, what may be given to us as a potential cost. So we don't know yet until we look at these qualifications to see.
Is there anything in the budget to this end of planning and other than the salary of the planner?
One of the items that's always available is the contingency fund. That would be the item of last resort. But until we have numbers, it would be difficult to know exactly how much we need to fund and where it will come from.
Unpaid, we've had assistant city planner.
Those are possibilities.
Yeah, they're possibilities.
Those are possibilities.
That's allowable to transfer.
It would require budget amendment, but yes. Any other discussion?
Is it possible that we can have numbers before we make the decision to vote?
Well, this is a request for an RFQ, and before we accepted anything, we would have some better idea perhaps of what the numbers are. I think, would this then be like the South Montgomery proposal that we approved not long ago, where there would likely be a negotiation based on?
That's correct. Yeah. So qualifications, the difference between the qualifications and the RP is the standpoint that with qualifications, we look at professional qualifications versus an idea that it's lowest and best from a proposal standpoint. And so with the professional service contract, I was hoping to look at the ability instead of the direct cost. Obviously, those are important, but yes, part of those negotiations will be obviously before any approval from the city is what the actual cost, range of cost can and will be.
So you've actually got 2 steps. You've got, you would need this approved, and then you would, after the proposals come in, they necessarily don't come with cost.
Right. Yeah, we would, just like South Montgomery, we
Right.
get the submittals, we look at those, we look at the qualifications, and then we go through the negotiation process with the selected consultant based on qualifications alone.
So you don't know prices until, I mean, undoubtedly the 3rd stage is when you would know prices and whether the board could approve that.
And we would have to approve each of those, obviously, moving forward.
So it will be a multi-step process. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor?
Hold on, I've got one more amendment. Under submittal delivery, we need to strike we need to change this date as well to March
Motion.
25.
Would you amend your
Yeah.
motion?
So I'd like to amend that motion to include also the change of submittal delivery to March 25th, 2011, under the title of submittal delivery.
We have a
You said that.
a motion to amend the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Corey has seconded. We'll vote. Is there any discussion on that? That seems to be just a housekeeping matter. We will vote on the amendment to the motion first. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, signify by saying nay. Motion carries. And now we will vote on the amended motion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion carries. Now we come to item J on the agenda, discussion and consideration of requiring the Citizen Transportation Committee to report directly to the Board of Alderman Infrastructure Committee. Discussion.
Madam Vice Mayor, may I be recognized? Let me be very brief on this. The meeting is going a little long here, but let me be very brief on this matter. The reason I put this matter on the agenda because I want the board to start going in a very consistent manner like we have done on other matters in the past. If you recall very clearly at the last meeting, we amended the terms for the Transportation Committee to be on a staggered basis so that we can start as a city going in a very consistent manner. I think y'all recall when the Alderman from Ward 6 mentioned that he would support that matter because we would go in a consistent manner where some of the terms were expiring simultaneously at the same time, and this is basically just a housekeeping matter where I'm seeking to modify the reporting structure for the Citizens Transportation Committee to report to the Board of Alderman Infrastructure Committee. And of course, we do have a infrastructure committee that consists of the gentlemen from 5, 1, and 7. And this will be consistent with the reporting structure for the Citizens Committee that deals with the municipal complex, whereby that Citizen Committee report to the Board of Alderman Municipal Complex Committee, which consists of the gentlemen from 4, 5, and 6, together with the mayor and Ms. Spruill. So just a housekeeping matter. This can save us a lot of time. You heard the gentleman from 5 tonight give us a report on the proposed amendments to the sidewalk ordinance, and it's no different. During the last term, we had a very viable infrastructure committee which handle all infrastructure committee matters, and certainly this amendment that I'm proposing does not in any way, form, manner, or fashion affect the operations of the Citizens Transportation Committee. So basically, I'm not aware of any reasonable objection that could come to this. There may be an objection because the reason I say I'm not aware of any reasonable objection because this basically just seeks to modify the reporting structure, just like we have with the Citizens Municipal Complex Committee, and it's also, like I said a few minutes ago, tie in how we trying to get the terms in a consistent manner. So with that being said, and one other thing with that being said is that if we do this, then that Citizens Transportation Committee could report to the Board of Alderman Infrastructure Committee, and I don't think they have a chairperson, but whoever the chairperson, they can make a report to the board, and then we can continue to move the business in a very orderly fashion. But this, again, does not minimize the committee itself. So with that being said, Madam Vice Mayor, I move that the reporting structure of the Citizens Transportation Committee be modified in that the Citizens Transportation Committee report directly to the Board of Alderman Infrastructure Committee.
Mr. Perkins has made a motion that the Citizen Transportation Committee report directly to the Board of Alderman Infrastructure Committee. Your motion, I believe. Is there a second?
Second.
And is there any discussion on this matter?
I've got a discussion point. we've got 18 standing committees that are external communities committees, and I think this is, I know Alderman from Ward 6 said there were not viable or worthy objections, but I think this is perfectly viable. When you think of consistency, which was his reason, there's 18 standing committees that are external committees. Are committees, authorities, boards, commissions, and not a single one of those reports to a subcommittee that is a standing board committee. We only have 3 standing board committees, a technology committee, an infrastructure committee, and a budget committee. And from my understanding, there's not a single committee report to any one of those internal committees. So I'm not sure where the consistency comes from on this. The Municipal Complex Committee is what's listed as an ad hoc committee. There are 2 ad hoc committees, the Comprehensive Planning Committee and the Municipal Complex Committee. One of those actually reporting to a subcommittee, which is the Board Ad Hoc Municipal Complex Committee. So I agree with consistency completely, and I agree with the fact that we need to reevaluate our term limit or our terms and make them staggered so that we do have some level of unification across all committees. But this goes directly in the face of consistency, considering that there's no other precedent for this. There's not a single other committee that reports to an internal board committee.
Madam Vice Mayor, may I be recognized?
Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. This is consistency. There's just a difference of opinion between the gentleman from 5 and 6 on this matter. At the last meeting, there was some discussion about modifying how the terms would expire on the Transportation Committee. In a lot of these boards, the terms expire simultaneously. So, I was open-minded about it, and I said, well, I'm going to support this as long as we move in that direction. So the only thing I'm asking tonight is let's move in this direction. We're not trying to abolish this committee. We're not trying to minimize this committee. I don't know what's the big deal about it. We're just trying to move forward and establish a procedure for this Citizens Transportation Committee with all of its lengthy work to report to a Board of Alderman Infrastructure Committee. This does not speak to the substance of anything that they are bringing to this board. So we have an infrastructure committee that
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your health care needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.
there's nothing wrong from a governmental perspective of doing this. I mean, we can move in that direction. I think it's a good thing to do that. This committee, just like it during the past term, the past administration, took care of all of these infrastructure matters without the committee, without a transportation committee. The infrastructure took care of all matters dealing with infrastructures, water, sewer, sanitation, public service, all of the and the electrical matters, and we can start doing that with this committee. So I'm going to just fervently ask my colleagues, let's do this. There's nothing wrong. We're not sanctioning anything as to their work. We're just talking about the reporting structure, and we can take this step tonight, and then we can move in this direction continuously in the future to do it with other things, just like we're going to do it with the term. The gentleman from 5 at the last meeting asked us to modify the terms, and I say, well, I'll make the commitment and vote for it as long as we can be consistent and move in that direction. Now, that's objectivity. That's looking at the picture overall. That's looking at the city of Starkville in the long run, because we're going to move in that direction. So we do have a precedent. You can call it an ad hoc, but whatever kind of committee you want to call it, it is a committee. And that process is working well. I'm a member of the Municipal Complex Committee. We have met with that Citizens Committee. They're doing a great job. They report to us, and we come back to the board. There's no interruption. There's no impediment. There's no interference with the Citizens Committee. We thank the citizens. We appreciate the citizens for giving their valuable time to the city of Starkville. So we're not telling them no by doing this. We're just asking for a process. You know, we need to look beyond the messenger and look at the message that we're trying to give here. That's the problem. That's why we still make so much at this table, because sometimes, in my opinion, that there's too much attention given to the messenger. And we miss the message sometimes, as I see it. There may be a difference of opinion, but Madam Vice Mayor, I'm asking, and my colleagues, you know, let's vote for this. And I said all I'm going to say tonight. I got one other matter I want to address before I leave here. I'm going to have to leave here in the next 10 minutes. But I want to get a vote on this matter, and hopefully the board will adopt it. If not, hopefully we'll get the matter from Ms. Helen Taylor, and I'm going to have to go. Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Any further discussion?
I've got another. As a matter of consistency, I would like to amend the motion to include all subcommittees or all committees with budgetary implications to report to the Budget Committee. I think as we begin to look at this, we can look at things, and those being the Beautification Committee, the Transportation Committee, as well as, because significant budgetary issues there, the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee, and the Historic Preservation Commission, as those have implications to individual developments, so that those can report. Because I think as a matter of consistency, in the Ward 6 Alderman's perspective of what consistency is, I think we need to take the steps to move in those directions. So,
Mr. Dumas, I believe your motion is to have any items coming from an appointed committee or board that has budgetary implications to report to the Budget Committee.
The standing, the internal Alderman Budget Committee.
Subcommittee. That's your motion?
That's my motion.
Is there a second?
Madam Vice Mayor, I don't have any problem with it. And gentlemen, you want to support the overall motion once this amendment's adopted?
I think we need to look at all authorities and all boards and committees so that we can begin to look at this, because as a matter of consistency, I think they all have to be consistent, whether we start with one or the other, because I think if we do what works for one has to work for all in this situation.
Second, I think that's a good idea. Let's do it for all of them. That's consistent. Second.
We have a second. Any discussion on this amendment to the motion? If not, we'll vote on the amendment to the motion. I think we'll do this by roll call. Do you mind, Ms. Allen?
Alderman Carter,
Yay.
Alderman Parker,
Yay.
Alderman Corey,
Nay.
Alderman Dumas,
Yay.
Alderman Perkins,
Yay.
Alderman Vaughn,
Nay.
4-2. All right, by a vote of 4-2, the amendment to the motion carries. We will now vote, unless there's further discussion, vote on the amended motion to have the Transportation Committee report directly to the Infrastructure Committee of the Board of Alderman and any other standing committee that has budgetary implications to report directly to the Budget Committee. Well, that's an abbreviated version of but I think it is the gist of what we're doing. Any discussion?
Would this mean that if these committees meet monthly, how often would they need to report to these?
This becomes cumbersome at this point, in my opinion, to have 18 committees. I mean, I think we need to think through this very carefully, because you'll now have 18 committees that need to report to some standing Board of Alderman subcommittee if we do handle this consistently. And then you also have the issue of anything that comes from a subcommittee that has budgetary implications, like the Recycling Committee and the grants, also then coming not just to the Recycling Committee perhaps, but on to the Budget Committee. So it really, on the surface, may appear to be consistent, but I feel like it is quite cumbersome and not necessarily completely.
May I recognize real quickly? In this is the time we have Ms. Spruill here. She'll help sort through these things. If there's a problem, she'll let us know.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? I believe we'll do this by roll call vote.
Alderman Parker,
Yay.
Alderman Corey,
Nay.
Alderman Dumas,
Yay.
Alderman Perkins,
Yay.
Alderman Vaughn,
Yay.
Alderman Carver.
Yay.
By a vote of 5-1, this motion is carried. And to try to get Mr. Perkins out in time for his church service, we will.
Thank you.
We will
Thank you.
hurry along to the consideration of the approval of the sub-grant agreement number 47Q611A in the amount of $126,585 with the Mississippi Department of Human Services on behalf of the Brick Fire Project. Mr. Latimer, would you like to address us about the legal implications of this?
I would, unless Alderman Perkins wants to go first, given his time constraints.
Well, I want to vote on it, but I have a couple, let me hear from you first, and I will make a comment for the record.
Members of the board, just some brief context. What this is Brick Fire's administration of a grant from the Mississippi Department of Human Services that allows them to do what they do, which is to provide child care services in the city of Starkville. There are two items on the agenda, K and L. K is the contract between MDHS and Starkville. L is the contract between Starkville and Brick Fire. The board will act on these items in the sequence, but let me talk about them globally because they're intertwined. MDHS requires that Starkville enter into a contract with Brick Fire for each grant that it does, and so that's what item L is. I've drafted a contract that you'll be reviewing tonight. There are two versions of it. The main difference is that one has an insurance provision in it and the other does not. When I drafted this contract, the two things I wanted to make sure were in there were an insurance section and an indemnification section. The indemnification section is important because the contract between MDHS and Starkville makes Starkville responsible for all of the financial management of Brick Fire. Starkville is the contracting entity. Starkville is ultimately on the hook. And so in our contract with Brick Fire, I thought that it'd be important that there be an indemnification provision, whereas if Starkville was ever called for any kind of mismanagement or failure to report in an audit to justify the funds, that Brick Fire would indemnify Starkville by stepping into the shoes of Starkville, pay for that defense, and pay whatever money may be required based on a finding of MDHS. The only way I think that they could be able to pay that is through the adequate insurance policy, because Brick Fire is grant funded, and I'm not sure they would have the funds separate and distinct from the funds administered through a grant or the funds available through insurance, that they would be able to do that with Starkville. That's why I put that insurance provision in there. There were two action items that we worked on over the last 2 days. One was to find proof of the legal entity Brick Fire was, so that Starkville could contract with it. That's been shorn up. Mrs. Taylor has showed us a form where they incorporated back in 1984, and that incorporation is still in good standing. The other thing we requested was proof of insurance, and Mrs. Taylor provided a letter from Merchants and Farmers Bank from today that said that Brick Fire has applied for what's called a dishonesty bond in the amount of $100,000, and that application is pending. So as of right now, there's no proof of insurance, and so if the board were to act, it would need to act on my contract version that doesn't have the insurance provision in it. Why is this important? Getting back to item K, the contract between MDHS and Starkville is pretty onerous. As stated, it makes Starkville responsible for the funds that are administered to Brick Fire, and it goes farther than that. It says that if Starkville enters into a subcontract relationship, that the people it subcontracts with will be deemed to be employees of the city of Starkville. That tightens the hook even more legally, because in an ideal situation, they would be independent contractors. Of course, if they are employees, the argument is that Starkville can be responsible for their conduct based on the legal doctrine of respondeat superior. So, just to recap, with respect to contract in item number K, Starkville is fully responsible for the funding, and they're deeming Brick Fire's employees to be employees of the city of Starkville, and there's risk involved with those provisions. And with respect to L, the contract before the board does not have a proof of insurance provision, and so I can't opine how much teeth the indemnification provision would have without seeing that proof of insurance.
Thank you. You had questions, Mr. Perkins?
I was going to see what the board was going to do. I will make some comment once I kind of see how this is going to go. I've heard from the city attorney. Let me kind of see how the board's going to weigh in on it, from Madam Vice Mayor.
All right. I'd like to point out that this is similar to the contract that we approved back in the fall for Brickfire, and a continuation of an arrangement that the city has had with Brickfire for 10-plus years. It is a federal contract ultimately, which carries with it very onerous grant administration requirements. Brickfire has done a fine job in the past of administering those requirements, and we certainly hope that that will be the case going forward, that there will continue to be the controls in place at Brickfire to make sure the grant is administered properly. The program benefits low-income families with children, allowing parents access to affordable daycare and therefore access to jobs. So it is a program that greatly benefits the community. We as a board, y'all as a board, voting tonight, are going to be voting on a policy decision that ultimately weighs the risk versus the benefit to the community. I think that we've done what we can to limit the risk, and we have a history of having had no real exposure with this contract. Having those things in mind, any further discussion on this item?
When you said these are employees of the city of Starkville, that's DHS? That's DHS language?
That's DHS language. I can read you the actual language when you get to that part. Any person assigned by the subgrantee is Starkville. Any person assigned by the subgrantee to perform the services hereunder shall be the employee of the subgrantee.
Who do we assign?
You are subcontracting with Brickfire.
But do we assign Ms. Taylor or each of their employees?
You know, that's a good point, because it does open up the ambiguity of what is exactly the assignment. But still, it's enough to give somebody a good argument based on that language.
We don't typically recognize people from the audience. If there's something quick you'd like to say.
We have gone through that item before when we first started. We read that language and we thought, well, great, we can get our benefits to the city. So I called the mayor, and at that time, the attorney told us there was a sub-grantees who were not employees of the city.
Any discussion at the board level?
I may be a little confused, but is this maybe something for executive session? Do we need to be talking about prior contracts with Brickfire, or is everything with that? I know we're talking about the current risk from the day forward with these, but do we need to be discussing anything that you foresee?
No, the Vice Mayor talked about Brickfire's good response to MDHS over the years, and I think that's true. It's my understanding that the arrangement's been going on perhaps 10 years now.
Well, over the years, the Department of Human Services, but through the city itself, over
10 years, and that there's only been one challenged finding by the MDHS over that time.
And all of that challenge is looking like it's going to be resolved, or?
It's still being, those were the fiscal years, 2008 and 2009, and they're being negotiated right now between Brickfire and MDHS.
So we're out of that one?
No.
No.
Madam Vice Mayor, Mr. Attorney, these contracts are 1 year at a time?
Correct.
Let me say this, Ms. Taylor, of course, and I just always used to heard me talking very fervently about consistency, and I'm always going to be consistent about everything come up, and and you pretty much probably kind of feel what I'm about to say here. I'm going to support this, both of these matters that's on the agenda tonight, and I'm going to support them because I have information that imminent approval is required because of some urgent and necessitous circumstances, okay? And I'm going to support them with this condition and understanding, but I have to just be consistent with everybody. And not say you're going to do otherwise, and we appreciate your being in the city. We thank you for all that you do, but at the same time, I want to say, and don't take this negatively, it's just straight talk, but we want Brickfire to fully and completely ensure that it complies with all of the contracts, everything, no exceptions. And we want y'all to fully comply with any other legal requirement And we want you to further comply with any policies and procedures and requests or directives from the city clerk's office and/or from any other official, employee, or agent or representative of the city. You know, can we have that understanding? Okay, so, and one last statement, no disrespect here, so, I mean, so we have the understanding before we leave here, and this is fully respectful to you and your agency. Let's make sure that as we do business from this day forward and going down the road, that we have an understanding that Brick Fire is going to make sure completely that it fulfills its end and duties, obligations, and responsibilities under the contract and any other legal requirement. We do have that understanding. So, you know, and I'm going to detrimentally rely upon that representation by voting for both of these, because just one last thing I want to say, you know, because I'm a very stickler about contracts. You know, I could just quickly go along with the city attorney. He's the attorney, and he did a good presentation. He told what the law is, and I believe in following the law, but not saying that you're not following the law, but let's just proceed with that understanding. I'm spending this time to talk about this, so make sure we have a clear understanding while the parties are present. There's a meeting of the minds, okay? So with that understanding, Madam Vice Mayor, I'll support both of those motions. If someone want to make a motion in a second, I'll go on record voting for both of those with that understanding.
Do we have a motion for item K? First, Mr.
I got a question on the insurance. Is it possible to approve it based on that insurance becoming active?
The contract, the approval of the contract triggers the distribution of the grant funds. Whatever we approve tonight needs to be it. With respect to the dishonesty bond, I'm not sure what that is. I don't know whether that would cover honest financial mismanagement. I just have to see the document and read the policy.
Ms. Vice Mayor, real quick, City Attorney, tell the board what you'd be favored with if we want, if it's the will of the board to approve this, what language do you want? Tell us real quickly.
Sure, it's
tell us quickly.
just the language in K.
Hey, read it. Just tell us. Give it to us.
Well, it's in.
I understand where it is. My packet's up. Just talk to me, okay?
Sure. Move to approve the sub-grant agreement 467Q611A in the amount of $126,585 with the Mississippi Department of Human Services on behalf of Brick Fire Project.
So you be comfortable with that if that's a motion, right?
That would be the proper motion to make if the board wanted to approve that contract.
So moved, Mr. Smith.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second
So moved.
from Mr. Vaughn. All in favor, please signal. I'm sorry,
Which one? Are
further
we voting on
discussion?
one of these documents? I'm sorry.
We're voting on the shorter one, the one that does not include the insurance.
No, item K is the contract.
The contract.
Item
I'm
K
sorry.
is the contract between MDHS and Starkville.
I pulled the wrong thing from my pile here, so. The agreement for the grant,
Correct.
the one that's headed agreement for the grant.
Yes.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay? The motion carries. The second motion, the second item related to this is consideration of the approval of the contract with the Brick Fire Project to administer sub-grant agreement number 466Q611A for the Mississippi Department of Human Services in the amount of $126,585. Any discussion?
And just tack on to that motion, the version excluding the provision for insurance.
When it's made, we'll do that.
I offer that with that
Okay.
representation by the city attorney's motion.
Okay, so Alderman Perkins has made that motion. Second, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Vaughn, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay? The motion carries. Mr. Perkins, I know needs to
Right,
leave.
right. And Madam Vice Mayor, one thing, Ms. Taylor, you know, and you heard all the communication there, and of course, we look forward to our continued relationship, but please fully ensure that we do the things that we just represented, okay? Thank you.
And we know
you.
Mr. Perkins needs to leave, and if you will indulge me, I know we have just one more item on the agenda, but if you will give me 2 minutes. We have 2 items on the agenda. If you will give me 2 minutes, we'll take a short break.
Gavel. Gavel.
All
Thank
right.
you, Dan.
We're now really back in session, so the next item on the agenda for consideration, I believe, is the request for the approval of the City of Starkville Fire Department claims docket as of February 23rd, 2011. You are
Vice Mayor, I'm asked to recuse
recused.
myself.
You are recused.
So moved.
We have a motion from Mr. Dumas to approve the claims docket for the fire
Second.
department, and a
Second.
second from Mr. Vaughn. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Or yea, and any opposed? If not, we will move on to the next item. Thank you for getting Mr. Carter. And the next item is item K2 on page 6. The request for the approval of the Waste Management of Mississippi as the provider of recycling services for the city of Starkville. Any discussion?
I have a question for the city attorney. On the, we would be approving them as the provider tonight.
Based on the proposal that they presented in response to the city's request for proposals.
Okay. And we base that on cost of each bid,
It would
or
be,
each proposal?
it would need to be a lowest and best bid analysis since the proposal asks for costs for the services.
Does the analysis, would the analysis include, I guess, our own analysis? In other words, if there's two bids or a flat fee, one bid is a per haul proposal. So is the estimation of sanitation environmental services on those hauls, is that an acceptable way to come up with their price? There's not a firm price in one of the proposals.
Starkville needs to justify that Waste Management Services is the lowest and best bid if it chooses to accept their bid.
So we'd need more I would say we would need more, what do we need to I mean, with,
That's up to y'all from a financial standpoint,
Right.
but the city would need to know that Waste Management Services is the lowest and best bid. Whatever steps that would take to be able to compare it to the other bids.
okay.
Of course, the city can choose other bids that are not lowest and best, but then they have
Right.
to spread on the minutes why they go
Why
to
they're
another bid
better than the lowest.
rather than the lowest
Right.
and best bid.
So you have to do the cost per haul by the number of hauls that we anticipate for the year.
But we need to spread those things over the minutes on the amount of hauls we would potentially have.
Exactly, that was the estimated amount for the year.
Okay. Okay.
It's something that you can formulate, you know how many hauls per week that Waste Management would be.
There's a history, I'm sure, that
Yeah, I'd really rather, I feel more comfortable doing that with a document from the Sanitation and Environmental Services Department rather than me trying to talk about that up here. Because we've got two different facets. We've got the actual curbside recycling, and we do have drop-off locations. So those are different facets of the program that there are costs. There are different costs associated with each of those facets of the program. Where two proposals have a flat fee to manage both proposals, one has a fee of per haul for the different programs. So, in my opinion, we would need an estimation from Sanitation, Environmental Services on what.
I believe we've calculated that amount. They have in their proposal for, you all have your copies of the proposal. Waste Management has in their proposal the call, how many, if they bring over 6 30-yard roll-off containers, and each time they come over with those 6, because we'll only have 3 sites. We have the one at Fire Station number 1 and the one down on Academy and South Montgomery. And we'll also have one, not at the sanitation department, but at the location we just furnished for recycling, our rubbish landfill, okay? So there'll be 2. If you add all those up, That's the total amount of the cost. Each time they would come over, and the pricing would still be less than the other two bidders. So that would still be the lowest and the best bid.
How many pickups a week is that through Waste Management?
It'll be one.
One at,
For curbside.
sorry?
Every time we pick up curbside, they will come over and pick it up.
So you have at least one container per week for curbside recycling.
We might have two. Hopefully we have two.
I mean, you're
Right now.
allowed two containers.
Two containers.
You're allowed
That's
two
right.
containers per pool.
That's right. And so far, they have been picking up two. Okay? And leaving two.
Okay, and then the drop-off locations, your plan was we would have a 30-yard container, one container at each drop-off location?
As of right now, but let's do it the way they've got it in the proposal, which is what he's saying. We have to have the exact amount. If we're gonna have the exact amount, let's go by what the proposal says. If we do less, that's less money. That's better.
Okay.
So let's go by what the proposal is stating. 6 30-yard containers.
That would be two at each site.
Two at each site, exactly.
And how many, and how
That's-
often would you anticipate those at each site being pulled?
Once a week. So we're sitting here, we're saying we're gonna load up 2 30-yard containers once per week for recycling.
Talking about the drop-off location?
Drop-off locations, yes.
And that would be one haul per week.
One haul per week
For all
each.
six.
For all 6, that's right.
Will all 6 be in that one haul, or will there be 6 hauls?
It will be separate hauls, $7.50 for each haul.
So you're saying
For
that-
two containers, $7.50 each.
So you're at 4 hauls a week. I mean, you're at 2, 4, 6, you're at 8 containers a week.
No, my
No,
math on that
no.
is if they're providing 6 containers,
Yes,
they've got 2 hauls on a or one haul is 2 containers.
That's right.
So that's 3 hauls per week.
that's it.
At $7.50 a week, or per haul, that's $22.50 a week. If you just do that times 4, that's $9,000 even a month.
Times 12, please.
And so if you look at and that's how, I know Blue Box put theirs monthly, that's lower than theirs. And then if you look at the yearly amount of, 115, that's, that's $600 or so, $640 less per month than both of the others. If you look at what they're saying, with their 6 hauls, 1 haul a week in each container.
Well, I mean, here's my only concern is I don't want to enter into a contract that locks us into those numbers per month. I mean, because honestly, that puts the cost of the program on the drop-off sites. I think the curbside is a acceptable number. I don't want to get into, we're not required by any means to drop off. We're not required for them to pull as many. So from the contract, we should be able to, if we needed to limit drop-off sites, we could limit drop-off sites. In other words, we just wouldn't put a container there. I'm sorry.
Exactly. I spoke with Mr. Terry today, Terry Smith today, and instead of putting 2 containers, since we're such a young program, he's going to put just 1 container at each site and charge us. So therefore, at each site, there will be 1, 2. He'll pick up those 2, and he'll pick up the 2 out of the landfill out there. So that is saving money. Until we can grow, the program grows, he's willing to work with us. It'll be whatever we want it to be. I've spoken with him. It's not on here, but like I said, I've spoken to him, and we will come together and put that together. Go ahead.
So my question, I guess, for Jeremiah and Ms. Board, from a cost-saving standpoint, your math earlier seems to be one of the best. There's The cost savings and the lowest and best bid is waste management?
Yeah, about $640 a month.
But that,
I mean, that's maximizing, you know, again, we're comparing apples and oranges here, but, I mean, we've got a yearly flat fee here, and we've got a, you know, a per haul fee here, and I'm almost of the opinion, and this is something that I think we need to discuss, but I think as we begin to try expanding the curbside, which I think is a goal, I would hope is a goal, I think we could limit those drop-off areas to the point that we then we put more pressure on the individual to recycle curbside. I mean, it's more efficient, because I still think there are a lot of people who still are just in the mode of, I've got my newspapers, I'll go take them off to the drop-off thing. Well, you know, we provide that as a service, and I think it's the responsibility of us to continue to push that.
But to transition to curbside.
To transition more to the curbside than we do these 3 drop-off locations at fire stations.
as long as we have the ability in this contract to limit our cost, because I'm not comfortable spending the amount of money that our maximum formula that we just came up with. I mean, I'm not comfortable spending that amount of money.
Well, we can do it not to exceed. I mean, we know the cost we know the cost of one haul per container at the sanitation department. If you look at the number of containers that will be there, and if we know what our weekly yardage pickup is, we can calculate that and then go into an understanding of how we then limit, because I think the limiting factor will be what we do on the drop-off locations and how often those are pulled.
That's the entire limiting. I mean, as long as we're able to limit that drop-off location activity, then I would be fine, because then that's, in your formula, that was the biggest cost.
And you have to take into consideration, you're saying all of it to be consistent. You don't know how much they're going to charge for disposal fees monthly. Starkville Recycling didn't put down a figure, but they put down $11 per cubic yard. We don't know how much they're going to say rubbish cost us to go take to the landfill, the Golden Triangle landfill. That's an additional money besides the $100 and something that they're talking about we need to purchase to handle recycling.
If I may, I think we have two
We have 3 quotes.
We have 3 quotes, and
Yes.
we have 2 things that, we have 2 possible decisions tonight. The first is to say that the maximum under this particular proposal is the lowest and best bid, and to accept this proposal. If we're not comfortable with that, then I think what we would need to do is table this until we get our numbers at a point where we feel like we do have an appropriate number. But if this is the maximum and it is the lowest and best bid.
And you can take the lowest and best bid and negotiate also.
That's right.
My opinion
you can
on this.
negotiate off lowest.
Yes.
My opinion of this is we have a flat fee for Starkville Recycling. We have a flat fee for Blue Box, and I think the flexibility really, as we begin to look at that, is, you know, we see some of the details associated with the program, but I think as we look at transitioning from one system to the other system of pushing the curbside, I think there's more flexibility in what's happening with waste management, because we're not tied to a set yearly fee. Because we do have the per haul fee that we can look at different efficiencies based on those figures.
So again, I think Mr. Latimer, you want to speak?
What is the rush to get this decided tonight?
We need someone to pick up the recyclables that we have.
Right now, we're on a weekly contract.
The same one that we're on now with
We have,
waste management.
2 weeks ago, was it last week? Blue Box was currently accepting our recyclables. We would take them to Columbus.
2 weeks ago, yes.
They were accepting our recyclables on a per haul basis. They were accepting them and sorting them as has been done for the last 16, 18 months. Last week, they decided they didn't, until we made a decision, they were not accepting any more product from us. So they basically cut the city of Starkville off and said, until you choose us or somebody, we're not taking any more recyclables.
The reason I asked the question is, if I had time, I certainly defer to the city clerk. She's got vast experience in lowest and best bid. I would want to look at some law just to make sure that we had every right to negotiate down on the lowest and best bid. It makes sense that we would, because we're going lower than the lowest bid that came in, but just to confirm that would give me some assurance if we had time.
I agree with the city clerk that you can't, I do believe you can negotiate down from the lowest and best.
But we have numbers right now to prove that Waste Management
Exactly.
is the lowest bid at this point.
Exactly.
Any further discussion?
Can we make a motion to then, so that we can go through this and get out of a weekly contract scenario, can we make a motion pending, is there a negotiation tie that can be there linked through the two options or what's presented as part of their proposal? And I guess that's a direction or a question for you, Chris.
Well, I think the math was based on the first proposal of
Yes.
Waste Management, so that's what the board
Yes.
would be approving, if that's what you ran your
And
math on.
if we don't exceed that, that's fine. We need to, I'm going to say to you all, we need to make a decision tonight. This program is young. We've gone too far to turn around.
Are you comfortable with putting a not to exceed amount on the motion?
And that not to exceed amount would mean, once we triggered that item, that we would,
So we can't put as part of the motion, a not to exceed amount?
No, because the proposal would never exceed the amount. I mean, the proposal is what the proposal is.
That's right.
And if Starkville can legally negotiate down, it can.
That's fine.
But the proposal is the proposal. Bids were requested, bids came in, you've got to accept the proposal or not.
The only thing I'm here requesting for recycling is for the lowest and best bid. That's all you have to vote on tonight.
I just want to make sure we have the option to control our cost.
Lowest and best bid you have. You can go lower or whatever, but you can't. They can't exceed this amount because this is what they placed here.
Vice Mayor, I'm
Right, I got a
approval
question
that,
before we go. What if recycling increase?
If recycling increases, this is still what they would. This is the same contract that we would have. The recyclables that we take out to the landfill, that we pick up curbside, then we'll have 2 containers out there for it.
They're only gonna pick up the 2 containers. If it increases, you can't fill up any containers that they don't put out there. So they're only
Exactly.
gonna have 2 containers.
That's exactly right.
But your question is more of if our participation increases and our volume increases. That's what your question is.
And what I was hearing was that currently 2 containers would be more than sufficient for Starkville. We have
Definitely.
plenty of room to grow with
Yes.
2 containers.
And at this time, like I told you, I've spoken with Terry, and like Ms. Outlaw has stated, that we can go down on the cost, and he's agreed to that. Only 1 container at each site, which takes away $750 plus right now, because he knows we're a growing program and we're trying to get it started.
Totally jumping subjects. The waste management, is with fuel the way it is now on a nationwide basis, is it any kind of fuel surcharge with a
No,
contract or it's flat $750?
Yes.
Any further discussion?
I move approval to accept the lowest and best bid for recycling services of Waste Management.
Mr. Dumas has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Parker has seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye, yay.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
Mr. Vaughn is the only dissenting vote, 4-1, in favor of accepting the waste management proposal.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And that ends our regular business. We don't have anything for executive session, I believe. Is there a motion? Mr. Vaughn?
I'll make a motion to recess until March the 15th, 2011, 5:30, 01 Lampa Street at the city.
Thank you,
All
Mr.
courthouse.
Vaughn. A second?
Second.
Mr. Corey, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand recessed. Always wanted to do that.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.